What's up, everybody, and welcome to your, it's going to be Tuesday, April 15th edition. We are getting ever closer to the draft. This is Browns Film Breakdowns. Jake Burns, your host, and we are, lucky enough to have you on this side of the podcast. If you are listening to this on Apple or Spotify, we appreciate that subscription. Likewise for YouTube and all the support, both reviews and subscriptions are always, like I said, greatly appreciated. We have a lot going on at the website every day. We have rankings of wide receivers 1 to 10 that went up yesterday in a podcast form, as well as a look at Joe Flacco's Indianapolis tape just to see if there's anything different. And I'll, cut you right to the point, which is when you're a 39, 40-year-old quarterback, you don't change a whole lot. But I at least thought the schematic stuff Shane Steichen did different than what the Browns do, brought out some interesting results. So I tried to cover all of that for you. If you missed it, it went up last night. If you missed it, go back, check it out. It's a quick read in the video there to kind of support where I'm at with it and why the Browns signed Flacco and ultimately the purpose and point behind that. We're lucky enough today to be joined by Ian Valentino, A to Z Sports, doing a lot more college and NFL, and that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on. So we're, pumped to have you in, Ian. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure, man. Love the content over here. Super excited to see what you're building. And, we're down to it. We've got 9 days left, 10 days left before we're kicking things off. It's crazy that we're in single digits. So it's my favorite time of the year.
It is. It's like this 10-day kind of 2-week stretch is where we've all gone in as many circles as we possibly can as a collective. I'm not talking about individual people here, but you go back and you look at the end of the college season, who people are sort of pegging in what places. Then you're looking at where it is now. And then people kind of come all the way back around sometimes on the people they originally thought after they get picked apart. We're in the 10-day stretch here that is not fun because we've heard every argument that people have. We've heard every plausible idea. We've heard every tear down, every build up, every propaganda piece that could possibly be put out there. We're ready to get there, but these last 10 days drag before the fun starts in Green Bay. And we got a list of players, Ian, that are actually going to the draft, and I'm excited. Most of the bigger names are going to be there, and maybe I'm old school, but I like the idea of the guys being at the draft. I know the pandemic sort of set that on a different course, but it seems like it's kind of coming full circle, and it's going to be cool to have like the first 3 or 4 picks up there on the podium. I think that's pretty damn cool. So I'm pumped about that, but I don't know, maybe I'm my own on that.
No, I'm with you. I like that stuff a lot more than the day 2, day 3 shenanigans when they start to get just super behind on the broadcast.
Yeah,
This is like the real stuff, right? And it's no offense to anyone involved with the other stuff, but I don't particularly care if like the legends announcing picks when they butcher names and stuff like that, or doing some of like the wonky stuff that they do. I want to see these guys react, right? Like even when it was Joe Thomas back in the day, and he's like out fishing, and it's like even if he wasn't there, it's still one of the coolest stories. I remember that, and it's been how many years since that happened. And
right.
so it's a very cool life event for these guys. And whether or not they turn out, or whether the Donovan McNabb pick years ago, like you get the intense boos and or the Laramie Tunsil fall, like you see real life reactions. You don't want to see people like fail and necessarily get booed, but like these are these memorable moments that can really shape someone's career. And you're happy for the guys in the moment. Hopefully you're happy for your team making the pick too. But yeah, it is special, right? Like if you only get one chance to do that, I know if I was one of these guys and I had any chance of going, even day 2, I'd still probably be there. Like, why not capture that moment? And you get the Brady Quinns where like they're starting to drop, and that's a little bit rougher. But even then, I'm sure in the moment you kind of forget about it because it's such a unique feeling to see that payoff immediately.
Oh no, I'm with you, and I like, you know, Goodell chest bump stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe like I said, maybe I'm old school. I just like seeing the top guys up there celebrating in person, and it should be pretty cool to see how Green Bay does it too, especially as this stuff starts to travel and make its way around. And I like what they're doing with it. Anyway, I know you guys over at A to Z put together a top 200 board. You can find that. I'll put a link to that in this podcast so that you guys can find that. But I want to talk before we get to the Browns at 2. Your thoughts on this collective draft. It feels like a lot of folks are saying great depth draft, a lot of starters, not a lot of blue chip players. And, there's tiers to blue chips. There's probably tier 1, 2, and 3 or whatever. But like, is your general vibe, this is a very wide, maybe not deep, but a wide class? Is that your sort of opinion on it too?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I don't think it's particularly worse than most years, and there are a couple of years that we've seen where it's just you've got, like you said, like eight blue chippers, or you've got just this extraordinary amount of um, guys that, quite frankly, they should be going, top five in most classes, and for whatever reason they don't. This isn't necessarily one of those classes like I think you've got probably, couple of guys where I'd say like almost any year they'd be top five picks, and then everything else gets a little situational. But I'm not down on the class though. I think it's strong at defensive tackle. It's strong at running back. It's decent at receiver. It's interesting enough at quarterback, and it's just a unique class because it just doesn't compare to like last year's at quarterback. Um, that creates some uncertainty. And then you've got, the COVID class is gone. Like we start to deal with the NIL stuff, and the NIL stuff has really impacted the amount of guys that come out. I think that's a good thing. But day three, I'm not going to be holding my breath. There's going to be too many, deep steals or that type of, unearthed gem that we're used to seeing like 3 to 5 years ago, because guys went back, and we're still seeing it now with the spring transfer portal. Guys that would have been drafted are transferring, and it's like, well, maybe, I can't speak for you, but like you might have been better off going to the NFL if you're looking to transfer here in mid-April. So it's everyone's navigating under these different waters. I personally probably don't have 257 draftable grades. Like you said, we went to 200 on our combined board. I'm sure we'll get a little bit more than that, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that for a lot of teams, they're going to hit that mid to late day three, and it's flyers. Like we're not
Yeah.
getting steals at that point. By the end of round four, I'm not gonna say there's no good players taken after that. There's probably going to be at least a several time Pro Bowler taken after that, but it's not that typical class where it's like, you're finding someone fifth, sixth, seventh round that's, man, I had a third round grade on him, and barring a medical, reason, really shouldn't have been there. I think we're gonna see chaos as far as the order that guys go, because they are so grouply close together.
Hmm.
But good class, interesting class, not super top heavy, and it doesn't have the same underclassmen depth that we were seeing 3 to 5 years ago. So it doesn't mean it's a bad class. It just means that the meat of those picks are going to be day two, and I think we're going to see a lot of fun and some really good value between like the 15th pick and probably like the 80th pick, and that's a huge range. Usually we talk about 20 to 40. I think it's a bigger gap than that this year. So it's a good news for a team like the Browns who have a lot of picks. A little bit worse for teams that maybe don't have the capital, like think of like the Panthers, like they don't pick till pretty late in the second round, and that's a bad team. So some of these teams are going to have to make do with having capital and not the ideal ranges.
Right, 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 right. I think that's probably why we haven't seen any pre-draft movement of any picks for the first time in a long time. A lot
Yeah.
of uncertainty around this, and sort of the teams at the top saying, well, if we slide back out of 2, 3, 4, or 5, the opportunity to get a really good player becomes way more like filled with variables that we're not comfortable with. So you're not seeing teams get super, at least the teams that have the sort of draft capital get hungry to move up and sell those guys on that. But you also get a stingier group of teams at the top. I want to ask you about something a little more off course, but I think this obviously plays a pretty big role in where this is going. Think back to like Tremaine Edmonds. I'm thinking of like Dylan Sampson this year as a young 20-year-old. It seems like, and I know I'm asking you this because of the college football coverage that you're doing, a lot of reclassifications are happening for 17-year-olds. And these are obviously not going to be everybody. This is a very 1%er thing. But it feels like these guys who are the, developed early in high school, top of the class players are reclassifying a year earlier to get a couple things, NIL in their pocket earlier, and then the clock ticking on being drafted earlier. Is that a trend that I think like I've just noticed it? And I know there's some stuff going on with Nico, and there's going to be moving parts in all of this, but this reclassification trend seems to be picking up steam, and it's obviously going to start to play a bigger part in these guys getting drafted younger.
I could see it continuing, especially because some of these states are different. Like what California can do as far as stipends with NIL from high school kids is different than what maybe like Ohio can offer. So I know like that's been a point of emphasis with Chris Henry, the top receiver recruit for next year for Ohio State.
Yep.
So I would say yes, absolutely. Like you said, it's probably going to be maybe 2 to 5 guys every recruiting class, but that's significant. It's significant when those are those 5 stars really do translate to the NFL at a different level. And so you want to be careful with that. I think that would be my only advice to young guys is you're entering the league at 20, 21 years old. You're going up against 26, 28, 30-year-old men. And, we've kind of been through it as older guys, me and you. And it's like, yeah, you might be a little bit more, maybe youthful and healthy, but like that's grown man strength against young man strength, and there's a difference. And teams are very fast to judge, so they don't necessarily give you. I was even listening to a podcast recently where the former NBA front office guy, and he was talking about when we draft guys at 18, we're talking 6 to 8 years down the road. In the NFL, you're talking about a year or two down the road. Like your career by year three, if you're not set in motion, there's a decent chance you're not going to make it. So uh, I'm interested to see how that plays out, especially with some of these guys like Jeremiah Smith. There's always been these freaks that could succeed no matter when. We saw it way back, Maurice Claret. Guys that tried to get Mike Williams tried to get to the NFL early. I wonder if there's a bigger push for that in coming years, or if NIL ends up kind of keeping those guys happy because they may be making more this year than what they'll make in the NFL
Right.
next year. So it's a fascinating conversation. I think we will see it, but it's only going to be those guys who are so obviously far developed that it's like there's no point in them playing in high school. So it is risky though, right? Like Quinn Ewers might be the argument against it. Comes to Ohio State a little bit early, and then he goes to a different school, doesn't get the quarterback development maybe he would have if he would have stayed at Ohio State. XYZ, all these other things happen. Good player, but maybe not as good as he could have been. So it's a tough line. You always want these guys to do their best, and they're making the best decisions that they can. But it's short term versus long term, and that's extremely difficult when you're splitting hairs like this.
Right. Yeah, I think, JJ is a little older for his class. I think he's a November guy, so he'll be drafted at 21. But like I was looking at Ryan Williams, the Alabama kid. He plays his entire freshman season at 17, early February birthday, so he's just now 18. And like, so he's getting drafted, likely getting drafted, just turning 20. So like that's the trend I'm talking about. Some of those birthdays, guys reclassify, almost playing their entire. And again, like you said, there's a weird counterbalance to all of this because yeah, those kids want to get money quicker and then start the NFL clock quicker, but there are also 22, 23, 24 year olds who are hanging around college football because they can collect some NIL money that maybe they're not even promised at the NFL level if they're a late round or UDFA. So that balance is interesting. I just find that question, and I know that there's a whole bunch of gray going on with college football, trying to figure out where that's going, but that's a fascinating one for the trend of those elite picks. Listen, let's start in with Travis Hunter. Let's get to that right now. All right, so this has gone from very much, are they going to take a quarterback, Sanders? Then it's Abdul Carter and figuring out that now it's worked to what I have thought all along made the most sense, which is I'm not against Abdul Carter. My listeners have heard this. I don't need to go through it again, but the synopsis of my stance is like, I think when you have somebody who I grade as the best receiver in the class, but also an elite corner in the class, perhaps the best corner in the class too, it's like, yeah, I mean, you have Denzel Ward, but Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, uncertainties, even if you baseline it that way. And then I think he's going to be a special receiver no matter what. And I want to push him in that direction in general. So it makes too much sense no matter what way you slice this. But I am open. I've had other people on this potty and who don't kind of see it the same way. So I like getting more opinions on this. I'm curious where you're at on Travis Hunter and sort of what feels like a marriage coming with Cleveland.
Yeah, I thought that made more sense to me than Abdul Carter as well. As soon as Andrew Barry said we view Hunter as a receiver, I was like, okay, my alarm bell went off. It was like I think you're going to go with one of the two Colorado kids,
Yeah.
and if you're not going to go with the quarterback, which is fine, would I probably take Shador? I probably would, to be honest with you, but I don't think that means that you can't still get them because some of this is reading the room, some of this is being okay with other options. And if you're happy with third, fourth, fifth quarterback in this class, then really everything gets easier. And I think that's what the Browns have kind of settled on. And when you look at Hunter, to me, you mentioned it. I mean, he's a great receiver. He's a great corner. Like, just what he accomplished was literally legendary. It was a historical performance. And I think what's beyond that is what's most important is the work ethic, the character, what he brings to the table for the city, for the franchise. especially coming off what the Browns are coming off of, where they've just eradicated all of their goodwill, all of the trust that everyone has in them. And so this is really almost like a once in a lifetime situation where the franchise messed up so badly that you've got the owner. I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised that Jimmy Haslam said that they whiffed on Deshaun Watson already. Like that had to be music to everyone's ears because they could have tried to do something or at least keep the facade up, and they didn't. And I think that that's an appreciated thing that everyone wanted to hear. And so when you have a chance to get someone who is going to represent the franchise at the highest level, and I think that's going to bleed through to the locker room, to teammates, the coaching staff. That's what you want with a top pick. The on field. You have to assume with the second pick you're going to get an elite player because if you're not, you're messing up. And then this has happened, but like the evaluation can't be off. And so the evaluation with him, I think, is pretty easy. It fits a huge need. And I just think that like for him, part of the sell is, and you don't want to overrate this, but with him, it really is true, where he embodies something that the franchise has to get to. And if you put yourself in the shoes of like, what would Pittsburgh do? What would Baltimore do? What would the most successful franchises? What would Bill Belichick do? They would take Travis Hunter because they know exactly what they're getting with him as a personality. So, and then you factor in everything else, the receiving class as a whole, the outlook of the position. Worst case, you put him at cornerback. Like you're not going to be mad if he's a number one corner, or if he's even like a really, really good number two corner and he's an A plus in the locker room. I just don't see how Hunter busts, health permitting. There's no way this guy's going to be a bust. And like, I don't know of another franchise, maybe like the Raiders or someone like that. Like, there's very few other franchises who just absolutely need a guy like that.
I mean, you're music to my ears there, man. I can't disagree at all with anything you're saying. I will ask, does a trade down appeal to you at all here? Is there something within reason? Obviously, like, is it a 26 first from somebody like, I don't know, New England at 4? That's probably too rich, going up only 2 spots, but maybe they love the player. I'm trying to think. Maybe it's the Raiders, maybe it's Jacksonville. I'm not sure. There are some opportunities there. Maybe even Chicago. You never know how that could go. So I would be interested. Is it take a 26 first to start getting your? Did you even need more than that to come off that pick?
Yeah, I think you do. I think there are a few teams that are interesting there. It depends on how much you want to take. Like, if Miami called and offered Tua and a first round pick or two, would you look at that? If San Francisco said, we really need a number two edge rusher, this is going to be our big swing because this is generally how we operate. And they offer maybe two or three first round picks to drop down to, 11 range. I might be open. You're going to pay for it, right? Like you're not going to pay the quarterback tax. That's the only thing is that what's going to hurt Cleveland here is I don't think anyone's going to pay the quarterback tax because they expect Shador to fall. Or worst case, Shador goes three. That's like so you're hoping that the Giants are sending those signals, which I will say, like it's interesting to me that the Giants had a last minute meeting on Monday with Shador and they sent management out there, like ownership, and they've been pretty consistently involved with Shador. So I think there actually might be something there. I know Albert Breer reported. Um, I do wonder if Shador ends up going three, and that's probably the best case for Cleveland is that you want one of these teams to get a little antsy. New Orleans would be one of those teams that would say, do you want to get him? And if you're not happy with Jackson Dart, this is what it may need to take. So I think you do have to start though. It's like how far do you drop? That's realistic. Maybe, yeah, if New England's the interesting one because what happens then if you drop to four? Who are you taking? Let's assume New England moves up for Carter or Hunter. I think, and then the best case is that Sanders goes three, unless if you're happy with Sanders. And then maybe you get Carter or Hunter. It becomes very convoluted, and I think it's just not realistic to ask that you'd get a first round pick for that. If they were moving up for a quarterback, it'd be a little bit different. But now it's like, well, for a second round pick, are you really that happy to get potentially your second option or your third option here? And I don't know that it is. I think there's something about asset collection that is it's nuanced, and we want as many as we can possibly get as a front office. But there's a risk involved too to say, well, what's the absolute worst case is that New England moves up, they take Hunter or Carter, and then what if the Giants trade down, and whoever jumps with them takes the other guy that you wanted, So then you're sitting at four, and you might have to take a right tackle or you might have to take a Mason Graham. And those are great players. I think there's some good options there, but like that had better been worth a second round pick or potentially like a mid first round pick next year. And I don't know that it is.
I start to get a little interested in where the Browns go at 33 because I think we're pretty aligned on the Hunter thing and what it takes to move down and the risk factor that you have there about some of those. You just need to feel better about a couple more of those guys if you're moving down. But 33 with their situation at tackle, aging players, injury concerns, and the value of those guys in that range get really interesting to me. Who are I really kind of tasked you with letting me know who your guys are that if they're there at 33 or 67, you start to get interested in.
There are a lot of options, especially at 33. I think this could set up really well for Cleveland. I like the Ohio State duo, Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson. I think Simmons he's maybe cooler in the media than what I think the NFL might be. We saw him actually get invited to the NFL draft, and I think and he's meeting with some teams in like the middle of the first round, like the Cardinals. So I think he's potentially more on the radar of being a mid first round pick than maybe a second round pick. But those guys are very impressive to me. I think they could both be long term quality starters at either tackle position, especially left tackle, though. Would make a ton of sense. I think Simmons is probably on my board. I think he's a top 12 guy. And you're talking about that torn ACL being an issue there. So I can understand a little bit of a discount, but I'm doing backflips if this guy is on the board at 33 because I think he really is that much more of an impact player. Could be the best tackle in this class at the end of the day because if he has all the measurables, Donovan Jackson's a little bit weirder because he was a guard for so long. He kicks out the tackle and he's a better player at tackle. And he's a
Yeah.
little bit shorter, but he has the length and he looks so comfortable out in space. Like it was kind of bizarre. Yeah, he gave up a couple to Abdul Carter, but in his first game. But after that, was a total lockdown player, really impressive. Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota, huge mammoth guy. If he's what they kind of fit, yeah, I don't know how they want to necessarily fill those positions. Obviously, with Juwan Jones, do they like those bigger mountainous type of tackles? Do they want to do that, continue that, or do they want Josh Connerly out of Oregon, another kind of more of like a pro-ready, good athlete type of player, a lot of good experience. Obviously, playing in the Big Ten this last year got better. He's kind of on like that Josh Simmons trajectory. I don't think he's necessarily the same level of mauler and athlete, but a lot to like there where it's like he's going to be at least an average to hopefully above average level tackle. And I think that's a really good return at 33. They may get a couple more athletic guys that maybe need a little bit more polish in that range. I would probably try to steer against that. The Browns really haven't done an amazing job, I think, at developing some of those types. So I'd like to see them get a little bit more pro ready. 67, you can't help it. You're not going to get guys who are uh, ideally day one ready. It doesn't mean that some of these guys won't start. Ozzy Trapilo is probably my favorite in that range. I think he's been
Hmm.
mocked, usually around 94 to 10 something. I'd be shocked. I'd really be shocked if that guy's available too much later after 67. He may not even fall that far because the offensive tackle position is that important. Elite athlete, physical guy, huge frame. Yeah, in this range again, I'm going to say it for everybody. Yeah, the guy needs work. It's like, yeah, okay, but with a good coaching staff, you throw some chips his way, you give him some tight end help, do more quick passing sets. Obviously, we know what we're going to be getting into with the Joe Flacco situation. Like this offense is going to account for that very, very well. And hopefully, you don't have to get the guy in the field right away. But Satchfield is my favorite, but I like Charles Grant. And really, now that's more the athlete type. So we talked about it with some of the guys in the second round. I'm willing to take that in the third round. I'm not necessarily willing to take that in the second round this year because the class is so good. Anthony Belton, good athlete out of NC State, mammoth dude, 330 pounds, strong, like gonna get in your face, gonna pulverize you. Kind of makes me think of someone that like Wyatt Teller would be best friends with on the field just because of his play style. I like that type of dude. I'm never gonna not like
Yeah.
these mountainous guys. Uh, but you're going to have to curtail things a little bit because he's not quite the athlete. He's a good athlete for his size, but he's not quite that freakish athlete. So I think Cleveland has to. This is the chance to really build the next iteration of this line. And what do you want it to look like? Do you want more of the traditional pass blockers at tackle? Do you want guys who can maybe get out and pull a little bit more, be a little bit more dynamic with the scheme? Do you want to change the run scheme or at least adjust it a little bit? And so this is going to be a fine draft. And I think whatever tackle they're going to take, maybe multiple, and certainly multiple linemen because they have so many picks. This is where you're going to kind of start to see that redefinition of the unit.
Yeah, this is great stuff. We're going to take a break, come back from break, and talk about some of the skill position guys that Ian loves and particular some wide receivers. There's definitely some running backs. And we're going to hit on that ultimate quarterback question too. So we will be back right after this break. If you are not a part of the Browns Film Breakdown subscription base, come over and join us and unlock the podcast over there. Very easy to do. Give us a little trial, see what you think. Plenty of content gets added on top of this stuff every single day. So if we're catching you after the break, we'll be right back. Otherwise, have a fantastic day